Have you ever wondered where restless spirits still wander in Perth? Tonight, we're uncovering the top 10 most haunted cemeteries in Perth, Australia, places filled with chilling stories, unexplained sights, and secrets that refuse to stay buried. Stay with us, if you dare. 1. East Perth Cemeteries. Western Australia. On a moonless night, a young photographer named Dylan crept through the gates of East Perth Cemeteries, hoping to capture eerie shots of the city's oldest resting ground. Over 10,000 souls were buried here. Settlers and forgotten children, many without headstones, their names erased by time. As Dylan stepped over cracked tombstones, his camera began malfunctioning, clicking uncontrollably, snapping photos he hadn't taken. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw her, a pale woman in 19th century mourning dress, standing perfectly still beneath a dead tree. He turned, but she vanished. No sound, no breeze, just the overwhelming scent of old roses, heavy and sudden. Later, when reviewing the footage, Dylan found one photo burned into his memory. The woman, staring straight into the lens, her eyes pitch black. He hadn't seen her face that clearly before. Paranormal groups have since confirmed EMF spikes and cold spots in the exact location Dylan described. Some believe she was a grieving widow. Others claim she was buried alive, mistaken for dead in the 1800s. One thing is certain: something still waits among the graves at East Perth, and it watches. Just before midnight, a retired nurse named Helen wandered through Karratha Cemetery in Western Australia. She was visiting her sister's grave. It was the anniversary of her passing. The cemetery was still, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. But as she placed flowers down, she heard footsteps. They were slow and deliberate and crunching the gravel behind her. She turned. No one. Moments later, a low whisper brushed past her left ear. "Go home." The voice was hoarse, male and close. Too close. Frozen in fear, Helen glanced around. Nothing but rows of aging graves and swaying shadows. She rushed back to her car, only to find a child's handprint smeared across the inside of her fogged window. Helen has no children. Security footage from that night showed no one entering the grounds after dusk, yet paranormal investigators say this isn't rare. Multiple reports speak of disembodied voices, icy winds without a source, and unexplained lights flickering near the crypts. Karratha's older section holds the graves of unclaimed bodies, former asylum patients, and victims of forgotten epidemics. Some believe their spirits never left, because no one ever came to say goodbye. Now, while visiting a loved one's grave at night might seem like an inviting setting for a potential ghostly encounter, it's not exactly what you'd call common to hear whispers or see apparitions. So what makes Karratha Cemetery such a hotbed for paranormal activity? Well, part of it might have to do with who's buried there. One of the most famous serial killers in history is buried at Karratha, as well as victims of some of the worst plagues and epidemics to ever hit Western Australia. There are even mass graves here, each holding the bodies of dozens of people who died aboard ships that never made it to their destination. Many of the people buried here didn't even have names, never mind loved ones to mourn them, so their souls are free to roam the earth, or at least this cemetery, searching for the connection they never had in life. As for Helen and her strange encounter, well, she never went back to that cemetery, at least not during the day or the night. But that's not stopping others from visiting. In fact, there are now regular ghost tours of the cemetery, where visitors can hear tales of those lost souls, and maybe even connect with them, if you're brave enough, that is. 3. Guilford Cemetery, Western Australia. It was a quiet evening when Tom, a local historian, visited Guilford Cemetery. He'd come to research the cemetery's history, not realizing he'd also be researching its ghosts. The cemetery, established in 1860, was the final resting place for many of the early settlers, and as Tom walked the narrow path between the graves, he felt their spirits watching him. Some of the headstones were covered in moss, their inscriptions worn away by time. But he knew this was the spot where a shadow figure had been seen, a man in a battered Akubra hat and a woman in a long white dress. As he reached a row of the oldest graves, the air grew cold. Tom's breath fogged in front of him, even though it was mid. Then he heard a sound that made his blood run cold, a soft, shaky sobbing. At first, he thought it was a gentle breeze rustling through the leaves, but then it became clearer, the sound of a woman crying. Her grief echoed through the old cemetery, each sob echoing off the weathered headstones. Tom called out, "Hello," thinking someone needed help, but there was no answer. Only the sound of the weeping grew louder. He turned back to retrace his steps, and that's when he saw it. One of the grave candles, long unlit, was now flickering in the breeze. It was then that he remembered the stories he'd heard about the ghost of a woman known only as the Weeping Lady. They say she wanders the cemetery at night, her white dress flowing behind her as she kneels by the grave of her lost child. According to legend, she died of a broken heart after losing both her children to scarlet fever, and now she spends her nights crying for them. Tom continued his investigation, and when he listened back to his recorder, he heard something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Beneath his own voice, he could hear a whisper, a woman's voice that sent chills down his spine. "Leave her alone." Though skeptical at first, Tom couldn't deny the evidence. Something, perhaps the spirit of the Weeping Lady, lingered in the old cemetery. And when night fell, grief found its voice. 4. Midland Cemetery, Western Australia. Lena, a university student researching pioneer graves, visited Midland Cemetery one overcast afternoon. She was alone, at least that's what she believed. The place was quiet, blanketed in a strange stillness, the kind that makes even birds go silent. While photographing a cracked headstone dated 1892, she noticed something in her lens, a tall, featureless, shadow-like figure standing just behind her. But when she spun around, there was nothing, just air. Shrugging it off, she kept working, but then her phone rang. The screen displayed unknown number. When she answered, there was only static, and a single word, "Stay." Later that night, Lena reviewed the photos. In 3 of them, the same shadowy figure appeared, closer each time. Midland Cemetery is said to be one of Western Australia's most haunted locations. Paranormal investigators have reported strange occurrences within its grounds, including cold zones, sudden dizziness, and shadowy figures vanishing into the trees. Some believe the cemetery is haunted by the ghost of a former gravedigger who died on site and was hastily buried in an unmarked plot. Others say it's something much older, something not bound to a grave, but to the land itself. One thing is for sure though, if you ever visit Midland Cemetery, you're never as alone as you think, are you? That was a scary story from Messed Up Origins. I hope you like it. If you want to hear more, stay tuned for more content. Thanks for watching. 5. Fremantle Cemetery, Western Australia. It's night shift. Security guard Jake is patrolling the grounds when he sees a light flickering near the old memorial section. Now, this is strange because he knows there's no working lamps out there. As he gets closer, the light disappears and he feels a bone-deep chill. Then he hears it. Laughter. Not joyous, but broken. It's raspy and echoes through the stone. Out of the corner of his eye, he sees a pale figure step from behind a mausoleum. The figure is dressed in tattered prison clothes. Its eyes are sunken and lifeless. Before Jake can react, the figure melts back into the darkness. Shaken, he checks the area, but there's no one there. However, he does notice deep claw-like scratches etched into the stone wall where the figure had been standing. For those who don't know, Fremantle Cemetery is the final resting place of many executed convicts, including the infamous serial killer Eric Edgar Cook. People have reported seeing shadow men, hearing screaming and feeling hands grab them from beneath the ground. Jake never returned to that job. He still dreams of the prisoner's hollow eyes and wakes with dirt under his fingernails. 6. Rockingham Regional Memorial Park, Western Australia. A florist named Mira was delivering wreaths one misty morning when she took a wrong turn inside Rockingham Regional Memorial Park. Her GPS failed. The trees all looked the same, and that's when she noticed an old stone bench surrounded by graves with no names. So she stepped closer and the air grew still. Then she heard a voice, soft but firm. "You're not supposed to be here." She spun around, but there was no one there. So she started to panic and ran, but the path kept twisting and turning, looping her back to that same bench over and over. She tried to walk around it, but the branches blocked her way, and that's when she whispered, "I'm sorry." And then the mist cleared and the exit reappeared. She later learned that the area she entered was once an unofficial burial site for the unidentified. Souls with no identity, no mourners, and no peace. Locals claim that the spirits there don't want to hurt you, they just don't want to be left alone. Number 7. Pineroo Valley Memorial Park, Western Australia. Ella, a mother grieving the loss of her son, often walked through Pineroo Valley Memorial Park at dusk. It was the only time she could steal away from her husband, Tom, whose grief manifested his anger, lashing out at her for being too weak, too quiet, too anything but consumed with their loss. At dusk, the park was peaceful. The air cooled, the birds flew home, and the towering trees took on soft, friendly faces. It was here, amidst the whispering gums and the drooping banksias, that Ella felt she could finally breathe. One evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, she heard it, a child's laughter, light, joyful, singing her son's favorite song. Ella stopped in her tracks. Slowly, she turned and began to follow the sound. As she walked, the notes grew louder, beckoning her forward. She emerged into a clearing, and there he was, her Ben. A little boy in old-fashioned clothes was running between the headstones. He looked just like her Ben, same chocolate eyes, same crooked smile. "Ben," she whispered. The boy paused, turned and smiled. Then he vanished. Ella slumped onto a nearby bench, overcome. When she looked up, she found a single white rose lying on the bench beside her. She hadn't brought it. In the morning, Ella returned to the park, desperate to find the boy again. She spoke to the park staff, who told her she wasn't the first to ask about him. Over the years, several people had reported seeing a phantom child who appears to grieving parents, always near twilight. Though Pineroo is serene by day, by night it becomes a veil, thin enough for sorrow to speak and for love to reach across worlds. Do you believe in ghosts? Let me know your thoughts. And if you liked this story, stay tuned for more. 8. Kenwick Pioneer Cemetery, Western Australia. Deep in the suburb of Kenwick lies a forgotten patch of land. Kenwick Pioneer Cemetery, overgrown and crumbling with time. Few visit it now, but locals whisper about the watcher in the trees, a spirit said to guard the graves of early settlers. One night, a group of amateur ghost hunters ventured in, laughing and filming for their channel. As they passed a broken headstone from 1873, their EMF meter spiked violently. One member, Sam, suddenly turned pale. "Someone's breathing on my neck," he whispered. Their camera caught a flicker, a tall shadow shifting between the trees. Moments later, the audio picked up heavy footsteps circling them, though no one moved. When they fled, one noticed scratch marks down the back of his shirt, 3 long, jagged lines. He swore no one touched him. Historical records reveal that several children and a grieving widower were buried there under tragic circumstance. Locals claim that disturbing the area without respect angers something old, something watching. Kenwick Pioneer Cemetery may be small, but what waits there doesn't sleep, and it never forgets. 9. Northam Cemetery, Western Australia. During a road trip through the Avon Valley, 2 friends, Marcus and Layla, stopped by Northam Cemetery just before dusk, drawn by its eerie silence and rows of weathered graves. As they walked deeper into the older section, the air shifted still and heavy, as if holding its breath. They paused at a grave, marked only with a rusted number, plate no name, no date. That's when Layla heard it, a low humming, almost like a chant. Marcus didn't hear a thing. Then the ground beneath them vibrated, subtly, rhythmically. Suddenly, a gust of wind rose out of nowhere, spinning leaves into a perfect circle around the grave. Layla swore she saw a figure crouched among the headstones, barefoot, with eyes glowing faintly amber, but it blinked out before Marcus could turn. Later research revealed that the area was once a Nunga sacred site, later converted into a settler burial ground. Some believed the spirits of the land were never at peace with the intrusion, and occasionally they make their presence known. Visitors are warned, show respect, or risk being watched by something far older than the cemetery itself. 10. Tuda Cemetery, Western Australia. In the quiet hills of Tuda Cemetery rests beneath windswept gums and long-forgotten stories. One such story belongs to Caleb, a bushranger buried in an unmarked grave after dying violently during a failed robbery in 1861. One evening, a camper nearby heard gunshots echo from the cemetery, 3 sharp cracks. He called the police, but no evidence was found. Curious, he returned the next day and discovered an old revolver half buried near a grave, rusted beyond recognition, yet warm to the touch. Locals have long spoken of a phantom outlaw seen pacing along the fence line, muttering under his breath, reliving his final moments. Some say he's still waiting for vengeance, doomed to wander the edge of the town he once terrorized. Tourists who linger too long near sunset report sudden headaches, a metallic taste in the mouth, or the eerie click of a hammer cocking beside their ear. Tuda may look peaceful by day, but after dark, the past refuses to stay buried. These cemeteries hold more than just memories, they hold mysteries that keep the past alive. Which haunted spots sent shivers down your spine? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more spine-tingling tales from Perth and beyond.